Countdown's underway. We are getting ready to go live. Into the live room, into on air right quick.
You're watching Force 13's live streaming service.
This is Force 13 live, and what you have on your screen is Super Typhoon Chanthu. Now Category 5 Super Typhoon with winds of 160 miles per hour, pressure of 922 millibars. Chanthu reminding us that it is just about the peak of the Northern Hemisphere season, Atlantic hurricane season peaking in the next couple of days. West Pacific reminding us though that it doesn't matter what time of year it is, we can get a monster storm like you see on your screen. My name is Timothy Ringo. I will be your host tonight for tonight's Force 13 live discussion. Nathan has the night off. He will be preparing for potential landfall coverage on Tropical Storm Mindy sometime during the overnight hours and into tomorrow morning. Dave, you're also getting some much needed rest. He also has the night off. We're going to fade our team in, which is a very small team tonight. We have Christian and Jonesy. Good evening, guys. And what's your guys' thoughts on what has been going on with the tropics? Again, a very active system. We have Chanthu. We also have Conson, who's exited the western coast of the Philippines. Olaf grazing the Mexican Riviera in the next couple of days. Mindy, who was just designated at the 5 p.m. advisory, making a beeline for the Florida Panhandle. And we all know Larry just sitting out there churning in the Atlantic, getting ready to threaten Bermuda and Newfoundland.
Well, again, it's pretty much active across the entire world right now. If I'm correct, we've got no less than 5 systems active.
Five and a possible 6. We're actually on Real Earth Imagery here. We'll zoom out right quick to give the viewers some context, and we'll cut it back over to you here in a sec, Christian. In the center of your screen, you do have Chanthu there. Again, that Category 5 Super Typhoon that is getting ready to go towards the northern part of Luzon. That's why there are Signal 1 warnings in place. Off the left side of the screen, you have Conson, which blew through the central part of Luzon, impacting Metro Manila. It is getting ready to come off the western coast of the Philippines into the South China Sea, potentially being a typhoon in the Vietnam area in the next couple days. And then zooming out furthermore, I believe we have now 96W out by the Guam and Mariana Islands.
I'm not sure off the top of my head what 96W is expected to do, but as far as I've seen, it follows closely behind Chanthu. No, I don't think the system is really going to develop at all because it's going to get torn apart by Chanthu. That's what I personally think, and I am not an expert in this field.
At least you're honest on it. And we will be taking a look at all of the watches and warnings across West Pacific. We'll be looking at the Joint Typhoon Warning Center and JMA codes here in the next few minutes. And we will switch over to the Atlantic side of things. Actually, we'll just go right over to the next tab. As right here, we have Tropical Storm Mindy, National Hurricane Center updating with at the 8 p.m. intermediate advisory, I believe 45 miles an hour, pressure of 1,004 millibars. There are tropical storm warnings in effect from, I believe it is Mexico Beach to the Santitichi River on the Florida Panhandle. National Hurricane Center thinking this is going to blow through the Florida Panhandle, come out on the other side by Georgia, and then we'll end up into the west central Atlantic over the next couple days. So that is what's going on with Mindy, which that one just came on the radar about 3 hours ago, and then taking more of a wide look, and for some reason my wide look is not wanting to work. All right, well, we will go back to we'll go back over here to the goes east, and we will take a look at Larry right quick. And I do apologize to viewers if this is a little unrehearsed. It was kind of on short notice, but I'm glad the team has given me the privilege and the confidence to hopefully cover this. So we will go over to the other side here. And this will give us a wider look at the central Atlantic. Susan wants to come up. Okay, we'll go with a different way. Let's go back to the continental sector here. Let's go goes east. And this definitely seems like a Nathan-esque kind of stream with things are just breaking on air.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, none of the satellite imagery is wanting to work. So, yeah. No, it's not a live event on Force 13 unless something breaks on air. And right now, the satellite imagery is breaking. Well, there's Larry on the side there. See if we can get a better look at it with the real Earth, which the real Earth is not wanting to cooperate at the moment. So, okay, maybe it's wanting to cooperate. Okay, well, there's Mindy. There we go. Okay, so now we've got the Atlantic imagery. You got Mindy there on the left. We'll zoom in here on Larry, which Larry was just updated at the 8 o'clock advisory, category 2, 105 miles an hour, pressure of 968 millibars, NHC making that update just before we went live. So yes, the bottom bar is outdated just a little bit on the information there. But there is Larry, center of your screen. Tropical storm warnings are in effect for Bermuda. And that's kind of what we've got going on across the tropics. We've got 5 or 6 storms. We will go over and look at Olaf right quick, and then we'll get into some of the forecasts and the discussion from both the JMA, Joint Typhoon Warning Center, and the National Hurricane Center. There's Larry on your screen. Bermuda is kind of hard to see, but it is right there, just about 200-300 miles to the northwest of Larry. And actually, we can probably get a better look at Olaf off of DuPage. There we go. Let's go down here. We'll take a look at Olaf, and actually we got a really good view there. And this is Tropical Storm Olaf. Winds of 45 miles an hour, pressure of 1,004 millibars. Hurricane watches are in effect for the southern Baja California area. Some people may know as the Baja Mexican Riviera. So that is what we have going on with the tropics. And if you guys do have questions for the team, you can tag us at Force 13 all in text. It is a very small team this evening. So we will get to your questions here momentarily, as that is what we have going on across the world of tropics this evening. And we will get into a few of the questions. I know Christian right now is working on a regular tropical weather bulletin, so we will have that. Christian right now is available for you guys here in a couple minutes, and I apologize for that feedback there. Somebody asking, what's the Dvorak rating on? Okay, you have to let me know which storm you want the Dvorak rating on. I'm not quite sure which one you're talking about there. And we got some questions coming in. Tropical storm Mindy, landfall imminent. Yeah, Mindy's landfall is very imminent. We actually have some radar here coming off a radar scope, so we will get that up for you right quick to take a look at on that. As there is where Mindy is currently at. This is off the radar of Tallahassee. And you can see it is just to the south of Mexico Beach, probably looking at maybe a potential landfall between Port St. Joe and Apalachicola, probably in the next hour and a half to 2 hours overall is what we're looking at for that time frame. And we got a question, what impacts could I expect from Tropical Storm Mindy in Jacksonville, Florida? Well, if we zoom out, and we'll actually get the National Hurricane Center cones up here now that you've got that asked. And we will be going through all the forecasts and discussions. God, I'm losing my train of thought. I'm sorry.
Looking at the interactive cone, the northern half of Jacksonville is in it, while the southern half isn't. Definitely parts of Duval County are in the cone. But what I've noticed with Mindy, and actually this is what the NHC has been saying, as this cone can always shift, is that the tropical storm force winds are only in the southeast quadrant. So if it goes to the north of Jacksonville, you're going to get tropical storm force winds. But at that point, when it gets to Jacksonville, it's supposed to be a tropical depression, I believe. All but right. Rain's going to be your main threat in Jacksonville. You'll probably get some gusty winds as well.
All right, that's one of the questions that we had coming in. Another one asking, could Mindy cause blackouts? I mean, we are looking at a mid to high end stage 1 on the CDPS. Very possible that we could see some potential blackouts from this. Winds are going to be 45, 50 miles an hour, so you could expect maybe a few power lines to come down, and maybe some trees breaking off, maybe causing some power outages. I would say it's not going to be nowhere near on the level as, say, what we saw from Ida a couple weeks ago. It's not going to be anything on that magnitude. CJ Cruz asking, could Mindy re-strengthen once it exits the coast of Florida?
At this time, they don't expect it to. It is possible, but the NHC does not expect it to at this time.
All right.
I'm looking at where they put it based on radar scope. They put it at 8 p.m. They put it at 29.6 north, 85.4. That's very close to the coast, honestly. Where they put that center, I think we're going to see landfall within this hour, since it's that close. Based on the point, that's only a couple miles offshore.
Yeah, I think the last center fix I had, it was about 31 miles out, and last check, Mindy is moving at about 21 miles per hour. So yeah, we're probably gonna be seeing landfall probably about the next hour to hour and a half, give or take. And just getting some other imagery together here for you guys, just so we have a little bit better view as to what's going on here. As here we go. We'll just we've got some RAM imagery up here. You can see Mindy there on the left, Larry there on the right. Still looking to be a very formidable hurricane. Potentially could be making impacts for Bermuda, as they do have tropical storm warnings in effect. And if I heard right, Jonesy, we could actually be seeing Larry potentially impact Newfoundland later on down its track.
Yeah, Newfoundland's in the cone. They're definitely going to see some impacts. I know about 2.5 to 3 when I'm pulling another graveyard shift around 5 a.m., as I have been the last week or so, actually pretty much since Ida, because my sleep schedule was messed up. What I've noticed is they were originally Newfoundland's been in the cone for a good chunk of a half a week. Originally they were saying tropical before Newfoundland, then 2.5 days ago they were saying extratropical landfall on Newfoundland. And then at 5 a.m. this morning, they said, hey, do you like a tropical landfall on Newfoundland as a hurricane? And I'm like, so you're just contradicting yourself? And now they're saying right after Newfoundland, it's going to be extratropical. So they keep flip-flopping. But that's also what Igor did in 2010. It made a tropical landfall on Newfoundland and then went extratropical. So, I mean, we're still not sure if it's going to be tropical or not when it gets to Newfoundland. It's going to Newfoundland. We know that. It's going to have hurricane force winds regardless on if it's extratropical or tropical. But as Larry's weakening now, maybe it's just going to only have tropical storm force winds. But still, I would expect hurricane watches to be put out. I did see someone in the cone. Yes, Greenland is in the cone. The cone goes all the way up towards like 65 to 70 degrees north. Absolutely insane. You don't really see cones go that far north. The tropical storm force wind probabilities cut off at 65 north, which is even funnier. So, yeah. But yeah, Greenland is in the cone. Greenland's in the cone. That would be extratropical. Newfoundland is in the cone. We're not sure at this time if it's going to be extratropical or tropical. Shifting back to Mindy, based on the point that the NHC went with at the top of this hour in the intermediate advisory, that was 5.1 miles offshore. So we're going to be waiting to see what they do when they do make a landfall call. Honestly, I'm going to be keeping my eye on it, but I do expect Mindy landfall to be shortly.
All right, and we got a question coming in. Will Mindy affect Orlando? I do think Orlando's a little bit further south. I mean, you could see some rain bands coming. We're already seeing that there on the visual imagery. And we do see a few bands coming into the Orlando area off of the radar scope there. So we will throw that back over just for a little bit of context. There's the radar there. And you can see some of those rain bands going into the Orlando, Palm Coast, Daytona Beach area. And some of the leading edge are getting into Lake City and Gainesville at this hour. So Mindy is bringing some impacts. I don't think they're going to be too terribly bad. I think what NHC's running with 2 to 4 inches, maybe some localized areas of 6 inches along the Florida Panhandle.
Yeah, that's what they're going with in the Panhandle. For Orlando, the WPC, they don't really have much rain down there. That's honestly just your normal summer thunderstorm in Florida, early fall thunderstorm in Florida, but the moisture there is definitely connected to Mindy. But that there is also, like someone said, there is a front to the north of Mindy, and you can clearly see it go all the way from about Montreal downward through Arkansas and Louisiana and Texas. That's where that front is with Mindy, and that also shows that that's why Mindy's not really going to strengthen that much, is because that front's right there. It's honestly just going to get absorbed into the front. That's why it's not really going to strengthen once it gets off the coast. And that's also what we're going to have to watch for with Larry when it's going towards Newfoundland, if it's going to be extratropical or tropical landfall, is if Larry starts getting absorbed into the front or not. That's what will determine if we get an extratropical landfall or not in Newfoundland. But Mindy is definitely there is that front to its north, so that's going to hamper any strength. That's going to hamper any reformation or strengthening off the east coast of the United States.
Yeah, and we just now got that cone up for Larry. You can see there the eastern edge of Newfoundland there being right on the center line of where Larry will be making impacts at. Again, it's going to be a toss-up on whether or not it's going to be fully tropical or maybe transitioning to extratropical. by the time it does get to the eastern edge of Newfoundland. The last time we did have a storm that made landfall in Canada as a hurricane intensity or higher and then transitioned was Dorian back in 2019, making that Category 2 landfall just to the north of Halifax, Nova Scotia, and then turned post-tropical as it did go through Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, Newfoundland, and into the Labrador Sea. So Canada definitely not a stranger to these kind of storms.
Yeah, which is why I expect probably sometime tomorrow morning or early afternoon. I expect the Canadian Hurricane Center to start issuing some warnings on Larry.
All right, and that's what we've got going on with the Atlantic. Now we'll take it over to the East Pacific, where on our screen now is Olaf. Olaf right now just off the western coast, I believe that is of Jalisco. They're down on the western coast of Mexico. Current NHC forecast does have it grazing the southern part of Baja California, as it will be moving to the northwest and out into the open Pacific. We will take a quick look back on that cone there for Olaf as soon as I can get it pulled up. Which thankfully everything seems to be running just a little bit smoother right now, thankfully. So we'll take another quick look back at Mindy, as Mindy is on its way to making a landfall in Florida, and we will get the cone up for Olaf here. And we'll get the cone up from Mindy as well. But here is what Olaf is looking like. Again, tropical storm warnings for the Baja California Sur area. This does include Cabo San Lucas. And Cabo San Lucas actually now in a hurricane watch. So National Hurricane Center thinking a potential peak of 70 miles an hour is in store for Olaf, as it does graze the western edge of the Baja California region, and then will eventually head out into the eastern Pacific and will eventually dissipate and die off.
The SPC did issue a mesoscale for Mindy. There is a marginal risk down there. It says a brief tornado or damaging gust cannot be ruled out over the next few hours. Weather watch issuance is not currently expected. They also do have it offshore there, so yeah, definitely over the next hour or two we'll be seeing a Mindy landfall.
All right, and then we will head back over to the Westpac side of things, where the biggest bulk of the action of the tropics is ongoing there, and we will get a good wide angle shot of this here, as right now Chanthu just looking just incredible. As it's approaching the Philippines, they're going left to right on your screen. You have Conson, which has now exited. Looks like it's exited the Philippines, now back out in the South China Sea. You can see it's starting to get some convection back over its center and starting to get that spin going again. Right now, the discussion is whether or not it may graze into Hainan, maybe into the Gulf of Tonkin and into Vietnam. Obviously, though, Chanthu there being the biggest threat there as a Category 5 Super Typhoon, and you can see just how close it is to the eastern edge of Luzon there. Signal 1 warnings are in effect for the Isabela region of Luzon, that is this province here. And we do have 96W back to the northeast here, up by the northern Micronesian islands. Not looking too terribly impressive right now, as it is just to the west of Guam and the Mariana Islands. But we will have to keep an eye on it over the next couple days. And actually, yeah, there's 96W, Chanthu, and then Conson. So that is what we do have going on in the tropics. If you guys do have any questions for us, we will be here for about the next 35 minutes to answer any and all your questions. You can tag us Force13 all in text. It'll light up for our team, and we will answer as many questions as we have, as the last 35-40 minutes of this live discussion is for you, the viewers. to get as many questions answered as you need in order to prepare for any of these potential storms. Seeing too many questions at the moment, so we will get the Joint Typhoon Warning Center forecast up for Chanthu just to see what they have to say on it. And we will take a quick look back over here at Mindy, as it looks like what would be the main central banding has now broken through onto the Florida mainland. And
So what I'm looking at on Shortwave IR, and it's only taking me up to 8:15, so this is 10 minutes ago. What I'm seeing is the low-level circulation. I can actually see part of it. There was a convection burst somewhat over it, but I can actually see the low-level circulation. It's just offshore. It looks to be it's going to be coming in very closer to Apalachicola, actually, than Port St. Joe. But it is probably going to be somewhere in between that. So it's close. I'm gonna say probably within the next half hour we're gonna have a landfall.
All right, we do have some questions coming in. Mohammed Saad asking, what is the Dvorak rating for Chanthu? Right now, with Chanthu being a minimal Category 5 typhoon, the Dvorak would be right at 7.0 overall for that. Braun Jacob asking, why is Chanthu still at the level of Central Luzon? That's where it's currently at. The Joint Typhoon Warning Center forecast does have it starting to make a curve more to the northwest and north as it does approach the eastern edge of Luzon. That is why there was only Signal 1 warnings up for 2 provinces in the northern part of Luzon in the Philippines. After that, it's really going to be a wait and see on what it's going to do. If it's going to keep going further north and maybe miss Luzon, or maybe go directly into Luzon itself proper. Tobias Ferrari asking, what's the difference on a merger and how's it different from a eyewall replacement cycle? The difference between a merger eyewall replacement cycle and a typical eyewall replacement cycle is usually, you see, for a regular eyewall replacement cycle, you usually see the inner eye start to get disorganized and break off, and then a larger eye takes over in place. The difference between that and a merger is, with a merger type, the inner and outer eye walls actually combine to become one complete eye wall, and you usually don't see a loss of intensity where you would with a typical eye wall replacement cycle. So that's the difference between a textbook eye wall replacement cycle and a merger. Getting down to some other questions. Mason Brown asking, I'm just wondering, how do you tell if a storm is more organized? There's a lot of dynamics on determining whether or not a storm is really organized. Obviously, you have the wind shear, you have sea surface temperatures, you have the storm structure. All of that goes into factoring just how well a storm is organized. And you can actually kind of see it with what we've got here in the West Pacific. Obviously, Conson drastically getting disorganized after making landfall in the Philippines, so it's structurally not as sound as, say, Chanthu just to the east of it, but you can see some organizations starting to come back over the center of Conson. That's why the Joint Typhoon Warning Center does have a chance of a potential typhoon into the Vietnam region over the next 2 to 3 days. So you have a storm that is starting to reorganize. You have Chanthu here, which just looking at Chanthu is just an incredible looking system. 24 hours ago, you could have argued that this was not a Category 5. The CDO being a little elongated. It had a little convection pocket on the south of it that you kind of see with these higher, stronger end Category 4, low end Category 5 systems. And it makes you wonder if that little convective pocket is actually inhibiting the storm's intensity. But looking at it now, you don't see that kind of convective pocket with it. This has a really Nice system, nice structure with it. You can see the outflow flanning all the way around. Really good northern outflow, really good southern outflow. So it's really ingesting some really good conditions, and that is why this looks really beautiful for this storm for this time of year. Again, Fort 13 analysis running with a minimal Category 5 typhoon at 160 miles per hour as of their last fix. And we got Jacob Francis asking any predictions on 96W. Right now, I don't think there's too much discussion on 96W at the moment. I think the Joint Typhoon Warning Center is keeping an eye on it, but I don't think they have too much on their forecast at the moment. But I'm actually going to be taking a look at that and seeing what they have on their discussion right quick. And we will get a couple of these up here. As right now, it does not look like the Joint Typhoon Warning Center has 96W on their discussion right now. So we will have to see if the JMA has something on it. But we'll take another quick look back at Mindy as Mindy does make its approach towards the Florida coastline. And we will come back over and we will take a look at Conson as to what the Joint Typhoon Warning Center has on that storm. And the Joint Typhoon Warning Center right now looking like it's going to bring it up back to a minimal typhoon right at 65 knots, just in before it gets into the Gulf of Tonkin. And we could see it maybe graze Hainan, maybe graze Central Vietnam, but Joint Typhoon Warning Center looking like it's going to have it weaken down to a minimal to moderate tropical storm as it enters into the Gulf of Tonkin, and could bring tropical storm force conditions up to as far north as Hanoi there on that graphic. And then getting into the graphic there is Chanthu there, as it's looking like Joint Typhoon Warning Center is thinking that it's going to continue being a significant super typhoon, peaking there at 140 knots here probably in the next 12 hours. We already have it as a Category 5 at 140 knots right now. But the forecast looks like it is going to graze the northern part of Luzon, maybe split between some of the northern islands there off the coast of Luzon, and get in between the stretch there between the Philippines and Taiwan. And the big question mark is if it's actually going to hold that track. If it does, the western side of the Taiwan Peninsula would be on the worst side of the system and would allow more typhoon conditions to get into places like Kaohsiung City and some of the prefectures there before it would go into mainland China. Or if it takes more of an easterly approach, then you're looking at a direct landfall on Taiwan, probably in the next 36, 48, maybe 72 hours down the road. So that's what we have for Conson and Chanthu, and we will get back over to the imagery here on Mindy as Mindy is making its approach into the Florida coastline, and we will get the graphic up from Mindy here right quick, as that is the only one I don't think we have covered in depth right now.
So, Mindy, based on the low-level circulation I've been seeing on shortwave, it's going to come in on one of these islands right by Apalachicola. St. Vincent or St. George is going to be the landfall site. The question is which one. That's what I will be keeping my eye on. Let me just show the shortwave IR imagery, and you can see it's getting close. It's very close. At this time, it looks like it's going to be more on St. George Island.
All right.
And this image, the most up to date one is from 10 minutes ago. So this is where its location was about 10 minutes ago. It's low level. It's probably even closer to that. Probably, I'd say we're within 15 minutes of a landfall. I think when I see that 0045 UTC imagery, or 0055, so I won't be seeing that until the 0045 till about 850, 855, and I won't be seeing the 0055 until 905. I think that's when we'll be getting landfall on Mindy. So we're within the next 15 minutes, in my opinion, from landfall.
All right. So Mindy getting very close to an eventual landfall there, right along the Florida Panhandle there, just right around the Apalachicola area. So that is what we have going on there, and then we can take a look at how Mindy looks there on the infrared imagery. This courtesy College of DuPage. And you can see just where there's one little burst of convection of where the center of Mindy is at. So this storm already starting to look very disorganized and disheveled as it's starting to make its way on shore in the Florida coastline there.
Yeah, so that's covering the northwest and somewhat north part of the low-level circulation, but I can still see enough of a low-level circulation on Shortwave IR. As long as it doesn't get fully covered, I can for certain make a landfall call. I'm not on the Cyclone analyst team, but I can definitely make a call when I see one, and then forward that to the Cyclone analysts. Mason Brown, when I look at Cape Verdes, I see a little cluster of clouds on satellite. Any idea what that might be, or is it just a big cluster of clouds and I'm being a little paranoid? Well, there is an area of interest over at the Cape Verdes that currently is 20% chance formation. So there is a area of interest over there. But it's not off of Africa yet. If we go to the tropical weather outlook for 5 days, it says a strong tropical wave is expected to emerge off the west coast of Africa in a few days. Additional tropical development is possible thereafter, and a tropical depression could form by early next week as it moves west-northwestward over the far eastern near the Cabo Verde Islands. Oh, they actually brought it up to 040 at 8 p.m. Okay. So that was 020, and now it's 040. So it's not offshore yet. Those cluster clouds you currently see over the Cape Verdes is not really anything, but they expect the tropical wave to be moving off of Africa in a couple of days. And I'm assuming that's the wave right there just to the north of Cote d'Ivoire and Nigeria.
Yeah, that would probably be the wave that the National Hurricane Center is keeping an eye on. That one getting that 2 and 5 day probability. I believe you said it was 0 and 40 for 2 and 5?
Yes, it was originally 020 at 2 p.m., but they just upped it to 040 at 8 p.m.
All right. And we have a couple more questions coming in. Braun Jacob asking, what typhoon could we compare Chanthu to as of right now? I'm not entirely sure. I don't think I've seen too many storms in the West Pacific that have rapidly intensified as quick as what Chanthu has done. I mean, some could argue maybe Goni was similar to that, but Goni obviously was a later season storm than what we're seeing out of Chanthu, so I'm not sure Goni would be a fair comparison. I would actually probably have to get with our Cyclone history team and Nathan, who is our main Cyclone historian, and see if we could find anything that would be comparable to what Chanthu has done. The only other storm I could really think of that would be similar to this would maybe be Mbali in the southern Indian Ocean last season, where it was a 40-mile-an-hour tropical storm and then rapidly intensified to a category 5 in about 18 to 24 hours. That's about the closest storm I could compare it to.
That was 1920. probably, because last year the only Cat 5 down there, so 2021 was Faraji, and I don't even think that rapidly intensified. Actually, maybe rapidly intensified, but yeah,
I think it did, but I don't think it did to the scale
I
that
don't think
Bali
it
did,
did
if I'm being
yeah.
honest.
I don't think it did to the scale of that either. I know I saw some people in the public server were kind of comparing it to Napartak, not the trash Napartak that we had this year, the 2016 Napartak, or 2017, whatever year Napartak was a Cat 5. So, like you said, I'm not sure either what I would compare it to, but I could say maybe Napartak and Goni are close. I mean, Sergey from earlier this year did rapidly intensify as well out of nowhere. I mean, we had 190 in April, and you don't really see 190 in April. So, yeah, it's interesting to think about what you can compare it to. But I'm in the same boat as you. I'm not really sure.
Right. Okay, we do have a couple more questions coming in. Tropical Storm Al and Amber asking, can Tropical Storm Mindy cause tornadoes in Florida? Yes, there is that possibility. Storm Prediction Center does indicate a marginal risk for tornadoes, so a 2% risk for most of the area where we could see Mindy make impacts through. That's going to be the Florida Panhandle, maybe southeastern Georgia, Jacksonville, maybe up towards maybe the Savannah and Macon area over the next day or so. Another question asking, why did Larry lose its eye and why is it clearing again now? Isn't it supposed to be weakening? Well, what's been interesting... Go for it if you got an idea on Larry.
Larry's been going under a lot of eyewall replacement cycles as it's expanding its wind field as it prepares to go north. It's just been going under eyewall replacement after eyewall replacement after eyewall replacement. The fact that it was a major or a Cat 3 for 4+ days, 4.5 days, going towards 4.5 days, was impressive on its own. It probably was dealing with some shear as well. The eye was also so massive that it probably, had to shrink in on itself a little bit, so due to that eyewall replacement cycle. And it's preparing to be a big storm. I mean, if you're just looking, you can see some of the cloud covers, so maybe some of the bands are already going towards Bermuda. So, I mean, Larry's a fairly big storm, and it's going to be getting bigger. It's just been going under eyewall replacement cycle and all that. It's also starting to move towards cooler waters, so that's that. So that's another reason why it didn't really go towards the warmest water. So that is another reason why that we did not really see. That is the reason. One of the reasons why it's weakening. And I'm also not sure what the ocean heat content is in the area.
I don't think it's very high for the Central Atlantic. If this would have been more in the Caribbean Gulf, we could probably see more of an intense storm. But this is a classic hurricane scenario. We've seen these kind of storms in late August, early September, where it does come off the Cabo Verde Islands, ends up intensifying into a really nice Category 3, Category 4 storm, and predominantly stays out over the open Atlantic, may thread between the Carolinas and Bermuda, maybe threaten Bermuda a little bit. But we do see at least one of these kind of storms every year and a half or 2 years, where it just blows up, looks like a nice little fish storm, and it's just really appealing to see these storms out in the open water. Again, you kind of give some context. You see Bermuda there. That is that little speck right where my mouse cursor is at. So right now, Bermuda, just a few wispy clouds, but if you're looking to the southeast for Bermuda, yeah, you do have this impressive storm in Larry with packing Category 2 winds, and it will be getting close enough to give Bermuda a little bit of a scare. That is why there is tropical storm warnings in effect for Bermuda over the next 36 to 48 hours.
So I'm looking at basically kind of where Larry is. Yeah, the ocean heat content here is Honestly, it's anywhere from about 25 to 50. That's, normal for tropical cyclones. That can cause weakening, that can cause strengthening. That's about normal. Once you start getting up towards 100, that's rocket fuel for rapid intensification. Anything over 150, 175, 200, you're going to get explosive intensification.
Yeah, and we saw
explosive rapid intensification, and we saw that with Ida. Chanthu was only... It did its explosive intensification ocean heat constants of 100, 125. It's, I think, since moved into the 150, 175 range, or maybe it's knocking on the door of it. I'm not really sure. Mindy, as it was heading towards Florida, I know moved through the same eddy that Ida went through. And I was saying this morning, hey, keep an eye on it. It just went through the same eddy as Ida. And people were telling me, well, ocean heat content doesn't really mean much for invest. Which that could be true. It was firing convection over that. And I was like, maybe we need to keep an eye on this because it can help it form. And Mindy formed. So the ocean heat content of Mindy when it formed was only 50. But I mean, still, I think that eddy definitely helped it out there. So definitely ocean heat content for Larry isn't the greatest right now. It's probably dealing with shear. It's moving in the cooler sea surface temps. So it's a bunch of the factors that's starting to make it weaken. And it's also such a large storm.
Yeah, and
that it keeps going under constant eyewall replacement cycles to make itself bigger.
Yeah, and that is an interesting question. With eyewall replacement cycles, we did have a question coming in, is why did Larry go through so many eyewall replacement cycles compared to a storm like Teddy? I wish I knew the answer to that. The exact science on why these storms have an eyewall replacement cycle is really unknown. We just know that it is a national phenomenon that we generally see with hurricanes in general, and some hurricanes don't even go through an eyewall replacement cycle during the course of their life, and some go through single, multiple, some go through mergers. It's really not an exact science as to why they go through them and why some storms may have more than others. I would love to see a paper on that would really just explains the eyewall replacement cycle phenomena as that. I would think that would be a really good read. So we'll just have to keep an eye on the weather community, and maybe a scientist maybe is able to come up with the solution with that. But we are just about out of time. We got about another 12 minutes left on our discussion, so we're going to zoom out right quick, give you guys a brief overview of the Atlantic. We do have this tropical wave still over the coast of Africa. It will be coming out into the Atlantic in the next 4 to 5 days, potentially becoming a tropical system. National Hurricane Center running with 0 and 40 on their 2 and 5 day outlooks. Obviously, you have Hurricane Larry there looking picturesque out in the Central Atlantic as a Category 2 storm. And we do have Tropical Storm Mindy making an imminent landfall in Central Florida at this hour. Taking a look at the latest radar loop. And right now, I would say it is very close to a landfall there, but I don't think it's quite there just yet. We're probably looking maybe a few miles.
Honestly, Tim, I don't think I'm going to get the shortwave imagery that I want to see to call landfall until after the top of the hour. So we may have to go a little over the hour until we get the landfall, which might be all right, and we can answer more questions on Chanthu and all that. So, but it's close at this point, but I don't think I'm going to get the imagery to call a landfall until after the top of the hour.
All right, and just taking a look at the radar imagery there, as it is very close to an imminent landfall there, right between Point St. Joe and Apalachicola. We'll have to keep an eye on the National Hurricane Center, as they should be releasing an update at the top of the hour on Mindy, since it is causing tropical storm force warnings. Any type of warnings like that this close to land, the NHC usually does hourly updates on that kind of a storm, so we'll keep an eye out that and see.
I know they didn't do it. I know they didn't do it for Fred, but they did release an update when it did when it did a landfall right before their intermediate advisory. So when they do a landfall, they are going to release a tropical cyclone update before the 11 p.m. full advisory. From what I know, only hurricanes were getting the hourlies for, to my knowledge, hurricanes that have active hurricane warnings and all that.
All right, and we do have some other questions coming in. Some asking why Recon's only finding 80 mile per hour SFMRs, but 115 flight level winds. That's a whole different science in and of itself. And we could do a whole discussion on the science of flight level versus SFMRs. And I'm pretty sure a lot of our more respected meteorologist-based contributors would probably have a good discussion on that. But we really don't have a lot of time to discuss that.
Yeah, honestly, once Mindy's on land, that's that's pretty much it for our discussion tonight. I mean, we're here to talk about Chanthu. It is a stage 6 on the CDPS, which is life-threatening situation. I'm not sure if our graphics have been saying life-threatening situation, but I mean they should start doing so because stage 6 and up is when we start those. Larry is a stage 4 on the CDPS for I believe Newfoundland, could be for Bermuda. Not really sure. Could be for both. Olaf is currently a stage 2, although it's not expected to make landfall. It's going to make a close approach to Baja California. So, yeah, so it's making a close approach to Baja California. That's why we have stage 2, because up to 10 inches of rain, and there is hurricane watches. So there's a stage 2 on Olaf, and Mindy's just a stage 1 because it's a weak tropical storm. Up to 6 inches of rain isolated. It's not going to last long. It's going to get absorbed in the front literally later tonight or sometime tomorrow. Conson, we do not have a CDPS for at this time due to the fact that the landfall in Vietnam is outside of 3 days. But yeah, the main ones are Larry, stage 4 for Bermuda or Newfoundland, or maybe both, except Bermuda is not a landfall, so that's probably for Newfoundland. And Chanthu, stage 6 for northern Luzon and those islands off of northern Luzon. That is what we are going with Chanthu at this time.
And speaking of the Philippines, we do have one of our Philippine contributors, Zenitsu, now in studio. Good evening to you, or actually good morning to you there in the Philippines there, Zenitsu. What are your thoughts on the impacts from Conson, and what are you hearing in terms of advisories from Pagasa for Chanthu?
Well, signal warnings have now been issued for Chanthu for the eastern portions. I believe that's the eastern portion of Cagayan and the northeastern portion of Isabela.
Yes, that is correct.
And as Conson is now leaving the Philippines, signal number 1 remains in effect for the western portion of Pangasinan and northern portion of Zambales. There have been numerous fatalities due to Conson, and possibly many more who have gained sickness due to leptospirosis caused by the floodings. We have seen wide reports of massive flooding in Batangas, and Conson had struck Samar. I believe there's a lot of damage there as well, due to it becoming a typhoon that quick and people not being able to evacuate in an adequate amount of time.
Yeah, that was something that our team was discussing with Conson, is that it rapidly intensified so quickly that if I'm not mistaken, I think Pagasa was a little bit behind on getting their signal warnings in place. Was that something that we were seeing, Zenitsu?
I mean, I don't really think they got their signal warnings late. I mean, like, here's the thing. Pagasa issued their warnings as early as possible for the storm, and the people, they probably didn't have any time to prepare because it was so sudden, but I don't think Pagasa's warnings were that late.
And what's it called? Literally, it outperformed the JMA's forecast. It outperformed the Joint Typhoon Warning Center's forecast. It outperformed Pagasa's forecast to the point where Pagasa, I don't even know if the JMA went typhoon. Pagasa went typhoon before it made landfall on Samar, and they had probably with one advisory before it made landfall on Samar, and then they had a typhoon landfall in Samar. It was when it was moving through that sea there between much of the islands where the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, the best track, the ATCF, they went back and they overrid 0Z. It was either 06Z or whatever, or 12Z or whatever was making landfall in Samar to be typhoon. So Conson really outperformed their expectations. That's why people weren't really able to prepare as quickly as they normally can, because it literally just popped on them. Everybody, including us, originally was predicting just a weak tropical storm, and then you just got a typhoon, which, as it was rapidly intensifying, and then we had the CDPS for 3 for Visayas, which is in the area of Samar. Actually, that's that big chain of islands there in the middle of the Philippines. And that's what I was saying. I was saying before we had the official fix, I was personally saying this is because of its rapid intensification, we could be seeing CDPS of 3 or 4, and we ended up seeing that. So, unfortunately, it wasn't that I agree with Zenitsu. It wasn't the warnings got out there too late because they were issuing the warnings. It rapidly intensified quickly that none of the agencies, none of the models, not even us, saw that coming.
Well, 2021 is a year of surprises. Chanthu rapidly intensified into a super typhoon that quick, and it seems to be continuing a west-southwest jog for whatever reason. So who knows, honestly. Pagasa's.
Well, the more that it keeps moving southward, the more of Luzon is going to be put in the cone, and there's more likelihood of a landfall. And if it strengthens, we could be seeing the CDPS go up. And also, as it moves more, you're talking about more wind onto Luzon. You're talking about more rain. There's also the surge factor that will be there as well. So it will be interesting to see what happens with Chanthu if it keeps moving south of the projected cones. Quick update on Mindy based on the 45 Shortwave IR. It's close. That convection burst is starting to take over the LLC, but it's getting close. I probably think in the next frame, so 10-20 minutes, I will be able to do a landfall call. I'm going to think that the NHC, as we're coming up on the top of the hour, I think the NHC will be doing a landfall call very shortly as well. So, and the Storm Prediction Center issued their new day 1. Slight risk remains in the northeast where I am, and the marginal, but that's for the front. The marginal remains in Florida and southern Georgia due to this storm. But I think it's very close on the 45 frame. I'm going to wait 5 minutes for that 55 frame, and then we'll see what happens. But yeah, Mindy's close.
Yeah, I've got the radar scope imagery up there, and you can see the timestamps there. The regular radar there at 59, and the velocity there at 56. And if I'm looking at the velocity, I would say that based on that velocity, that Mindy is currently making landfall. I'm not saying that it has officially made landfall yet. Obviously, the National Hurricane Center would be able to make that call, but I would say we are seeing landfall happening there just to the southwest of Apalachicola at this time.
Yeah, I'm on the Eglin Air Force Base radar. Let's see, you're on Tallahassee. So I'm kind of seeing this. The greens are starting to get onto the two islands right there. The red is behind it, so I do see that circulation. So I'll see that with the 55 outlook, but the center is not over that. So I'm going to agree with you. It's starting to make a landfall, I think. And we're probably going to be going. Since it's now past the top of the hour, we're probably going to be here for about another 15 minutes to probably towards the bottom of the hour. We'll talk about Chanthu. If anybody wanted to ask us about the CDPS or what our R0Z fixes were, then from the Cyclone analyst team, then we can do that. We'll talking advisories. The next Joint Typhoon Warning Center advisories on Conson and Chanthu will be coming out at 11 p.m. Eastern, so that is 2 hours. That is also when the next Pagasa advisories come out. That will be 11 a.m. in the Philippines, which will be 11 Eastern here on the East Coast. That's also when we get the full advisories on Mindy, Olaf, and Larry over in the Western Hemisphere side of the world, so in the Eastern Pacific and the North Atlantic. So all the next advisories are forecasted for then. For the JMA, for Conson and Chanthu, their next advisories will they do go at 0Z. I think probably, I don't know when the next one is for them. It's either, I don't know if they're doing 3 hour or 6 hour or 9 hour. Definitely they'll be doing one at 9Z, which is 5 a.m. I'm not sure if they'll be doing one before that, though.
All right, we did have a question incoming. Is Chanthu going to hit the Philippines? Right now, that's the Joint Typhoon Warning Center cone on your screen there, as it's looking like Chanthu could graze the northern part of Luzon there. Maybe threaten Taiwan. Really, there's a lot of uncertainty once you get out past the 3-day mark as to whether or not it's going to go into the Philippines, up through Taiwan, or into mainland China. At this point, it's really a toss-up on where we could see Chanthu go, if I'm being honest.
For mainland Luzon, it's a toss-up depending on if it keeps moving southward. Those islands there in the Luzon Strait, they're definitely going to get impacted by Chanthu. Even if it doesn't make a direct landfall, they're going to get typhoon force winds, they're going to get a lot of rain, they're going to get surge. So if you know anyone on those islands, they're definitely going to be in signal 3s and signal 4s on the wind signals. Definitely. As for mainland Luzon itself, that's to wait and see, and that's it. How farther south it keeps moving of the cone, and when does it start doing that northwest turn?
If I could just reiterate some stuff from the Pagasa Bulletin. Beginning tomorrow evening, heavy to intense, with at times torrential rainfall due to the typhoon will be experienced over Batanes, Cagayan, including Babuyan Islands and northern Isabela. And flash floods and rain-induced landslides are likely in those areas. Signal number 4 remains the highest wind signal to be expected from this system. We could go to 5 if Pagasa notices that it is a super typhoon as per their analysis, but I don't really think that's likely at the moment. Currently, Pagasa has 185 kilometers per hour and gusts of 230 kilometers per hour for Typhoon Kiko or Chanthu, or for some Super Typhoon Chanthu. And people near these areas should immediately prepare for the worst to come from this storm.
So the 0Z ATCF is out on Chanthu. They have 140 knots, 925. So the JTWC at their next advisory, they will be going back to Cat 5. They had it Cat 5 once, then they brought it back to Cat 4. But that's to give you an idea. For 11 p.m., so 2 hours from now, JTWC will be upping Chanthu back to a Cat 5.
Yep, and Force 13 has kept Chanthu at a Category 5 Super Typhoon through most of the day today. Our Cyclone analyst team at times wrestling on whether or not to downgrade it to Category 4 a few times, just like the ATCF and Joint Typhoon Warning Center has done. But overall, if I'm looking at Chanthu right now, which Chanthu is just a really incredible looking storm right now as we zoom in on it. And if I'm looking at this, I can't see any argument against it to not upgrade it to Category 5 again. It just looks very picturesque. The only problem that I see with this scene is the fact that the Philippines are within about a 2-day stretch from this storm. Other than that, this is just a beautiful storm that you would normally see this time of year.
Yeah, and and as it keeps moving more and more southwards, the question is, when will it start turning northeastward? Because the more that it keeps going south and west, when it does do that northwest turn, there's a better and better chance that parts of northern Luzon is going to get a landfall. Now, I think down by Bicol and Samar and Catanduanes, it's not going to go that far south. Don't worry, you're not going to get it. But especially Catanduanes, that's the last thing they want is another, Cat 5 Super Typhoon after, going last year. I think the main threat here is Luzon Strait and northern Luzon. That's where Chanthu is. And as it keeps going more and more south, that worries you that more and more of northern Luzon could get landfall. So if you're anywhere there in northern Luzon, right now you're not supposed to get a direct landfall, but I would keep an eye on this. I would start preparing just in case to be safe.
And we do have a couple other questions coming in, asking if Brian Valera asking if there's another tropical storm that formed. Yes, we had Tropical Storm Mindy that formed at the 5 o'clock advisory from the National Hurricane Center. Mindy right now making landfall in the central Florida Panhandle region at this time.
Yes, we're going to preference that is that's in the North Atlantic. That's not in the Western Pacific. I think this because I know that person was asking a lot of Western Pacific questions. That is over in the North Atlantic. If you're wondering if 96W is a tropical storm, no, it is not. It's still an area of interest. It has 10% formation chance.
Yep, and speaking of
the one thing.
Yeah, Zenitsu?
The one thing that's worrying about Chanthu is that it keeps going west southwest and the ridge seems to be strengthening. So if it keeps going down that track, then God forbid, we might as well definitely see a Luzon landfall. But if the worst case scenario happens, might get signal number 1 in Metro Manila and maybe some flooding. But just expect prepare for the worst, honestly, for the people living near these areas that have already been put under signal warnings.
All right, just a couple things. Mason Brown, will the wave in Africa do anything somewhere near the southeastern United States? That's still too far at this time to forecast that. That's way far out, and we don't even know where it's going to go. It's not it. Like I said, it's still by Nigeria and Cote d'Ivoire and Niger and all those countries over there in Western Africa. Yeah, it's still way too far out. There is a tornado warning in Florida for Crawfordville. That's by the Florida actually no, that's not by the Florida Georgia border. That's by some kind of county border due to Mindy. So if if you're watching us from Crawfordville or you're within that polygon, make sure you take your tornado warning precautions and get to shelter immediately. Do tropical storms run in the same path as Mindy? The one that I can think about would be Nestor. So that from 2017, which was just a quick one, and it made a post-tropical landfall in Florida. So there is that. And I do see you have radar scope up. Yeah, there's definitely a couplet there. Good call on the NWS there in Tallahassee.
Yeah, you can see that couplet there. This being in relation to Tropical Storm Mindy making landfall. Yeah, and this is right within that marginal 2% risk that we were seeing the SPC put up for this tropical system. So definitely the right call. Clear couplet there. Not sure if it's going to be really too intense. This is normally what you would expect from a landfalling tropical system, these brief spin-up tornadoes that you do see with these kind of tropical storms in this area. So we'll throw it back over to the main imagery, which is on the West Pacific there. And yeah, we have crossed the top of the hour. We'll be with you about for another 20 minutes here on 413 here. Taking a quick look at the West Pacific, going from left to right on your screen, we have Conson, Chanthu, and what could be our next system there, 96W. Right now, Joint Typhoon Warning Center does not have it on their current forecast. JMA, I believe, is recognizing it. But right now, the biggest threat in the West Pac is Chanthu. Beautiful Category 5 Super Typhoon. As you've heard our team discussing on whether or not it's going to make a northern turn. I dare say this, but hoping and praying for this northern turn is similar to what we did with Dorian back in 2019. The difference is instead of being a Category 5 impacting the Bahamas, this is a potential Category 5 impacting central Luzon into the Contowandes and maybe getting into maybe Mindoro if it goes far enough south.
Who knows? That probably seemed very unlikely once we started tracking this storm, but now it's seeming more and more likely as the storm continues heading west southwest. So we're just praying that hopefully it makes a northward turn and that it doesn't make it too late. Like either scenario, Luzon is still going to get some impacts nonetheless. So we're just going to hope for the best, honestly, to come out from the storm.
Exactly. And what is interesting about the West Pacific, where the Atlantic has the hot zone between the Carolinas and Bermuda for most traversed area for most storms, the West Pacific, that hot zone is right off the northeastern tip of Luzon. So definitely not a spot where we'd want to see this storm. I mean, it's taking that northwestern path right through that hot zone. We'll actually bring up the Joint Typhoon Warning Center forecast there again. And right at about the day 2 to day 3 where it's going to be making that northward turn, that is right in that area of where we see that hot box of where about 80 to 90%, I would say, of most tropical cyclones in the West Pacific traverse through. It's just right off of that northeastern corner of Luzon there. So definitely this is taking a textbook approach for the forecasting from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, but obviously it has been making a west-southwest jog. You can actually see the movement vector on the JTWC advisory there moving at 265, so it's just a little south of due west, and if it holds that course all the way through, then we could see this hitting the east central part of Luzon. Obviously not something we really want to have after this area has been devastated by Conson earlier in the week.
Sorry to interrupt, but it appears as if Chanthu is about to perform an annual replacement cycle.
Let's see here if we can see that on the visual. The visual might be a little outdated But if it is, that might be the one break that the Philippines could use with this storm. As obviously an eyewall replacement cycle would take it below Category 5 status, probably down to about a low to maybe mid Cat 4, maybe high end Cat 3, depending on how much the eyewall replacement cycle disrupts the structure of the storm. So if that eyewall replacement cycle is happening, this could probably be the biggest break that the Philippines could afford to get between after getting hit with Conson and now with Chanthu right on the doorsteps here in the next couple days.
Just mentioning for Christian that the tropical weather bulletin is now live on the Force 13 channel, and I sent a microwave image.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I heard.
Sorry, I'm in a Zoom meeting.
I heard that in the background. But yes, the tropical weather bulletin is out now. You guys can watch that when we are done here. I have requested the Cyclone analyst team to do a fix for Mindy based on what I've seen with the 00 55 UTC and 0105 UTC, and with radar scope. I asked them to do a fix. I'm going to wait for when they call the time, but I'm going to call it here that we have landfall for Mindy on St. George Island. There in Florida. That's a barrier island in Florida to the southwest and south of Apalachicola. So Mindy has made landfall in Florida.
And we will come back over to the radar scope here and we'll take a look at that. As I would say,
if you look at it from England, then I think you'll agree with me on that.
Alright, Tallahassee looks a little inconclusive, so we will go up here to Elgin Air Force Base radar and see how it looks from there as we get this radar loaded up. And the tricky part about calling landfalls is how you define it. Some agencies define it from the northern.
NHC has called landfall.
They have called it?
Yes, they have just called it for 8:15. So good call that I made it right there because the NHC just followed suit. We do not have one from the Cyclone analyst team yet, but pretty much went ahead with them, and they also they went St. Vincent, but those islands are next to each other. St. Vincent, St. George Island, those two barrier islands. We have landfall from Mindy in Florida.
All right, well, you've heard it first. Breaking news. Tropical Storm Mindy, very short-lived, is designated at 5 o'clock Eastern Time by the National Hurricane Center, has made landfall in the St. Vincent, St. George area of Florida. So that is the breaking news there out of our Cyclone analyst team and the National Hurricane Center. And looks like they have it just a little bit stronger there. No, they kept it at 45 miles per hour, 1,004 millibars as of the 8:15 update. So that is currently what we have, as we'll keep the radar imagery up there for another few seconds as Tropical Storm Mindy has made landfall in Florida. So we'll go back over to our main imagery there, which is of Super Typhoon Chanthu there, looking picturesque as can be through most of the day. And right now, is our team thinking that this could be going through an eyewall replacement cycle?
It's possible it could be going through an eyewall replacement cycle.
All right, and looks like we've got some microwave imagery, so we'll get this up. This being brought up by Zenitsu here, so we will get this on the screen right quick. And we'll let the team kind of digest this. It does look like we do have that secondary eye wall there, so we may be seeing this trying to execute an eye wall replacement cycle, maybe?
It could be possibly doing it. I know people were saying earlier that it could have been doing an eye wall replacement cycle, so it could be doing one. Which the only thing is that will make it weaker for a little bit, but that would make the wind field bigger, which means more people would get tropical storm force winds.
All right, and with Mindy making landfall, we will be ending our coverage here at the bottom of the hour, so you guys have about 7 or 8 minutes more to try to get your questions into this team, as we are going to take a quick trip around the Northern Hemisphere. Obviously, Southern Hemisphere season hasn't started yet, so we'll start in the Westpac with Conson there on the left, potentially getting reorganized, potentially becoming a typhoon as it does approach the Vietnam Hainan area, and eventually forecasted the weekend as it enters in the Gulf of Tonkin, possibly bringing tropical storm force conditions to northern Vietnam, maybe up towards the Hanoi area. And into the obvious main feature is Chanthu. I know some are asking for eye temperatures right now. I don't have that information in front of me at this time, but if you want to get that information, you can always join our Discord, discord.gg/force13, where you could probably find that information from some of our team in our public server, specifically in the West Pacific room, where we do have a dedicated thread all on Chanthu. So that would be a good spot to go to if you want to discuss the eye temperatures on Chanthu at this time. And then moving to the right of Chanthu, this is 96W, just to the west of the Micronesian Islands and the Mariana Islands. Not looking too terribly organized right now. All
right, I'm gonna cut you off real quick. Sorry, Tim. So I got that. I got that landfall fix I was asking for from our analyst team. They went with 920. We now have Mindy as a landfall as of 9:20 or 1:20 Zulu, 8:20 on Central. NHC went with 8:15 Central or 9:15 Eastern. I went a little ahead of them. I went at 9:10 based on what I saw from the radar scope and what I saw from the 0105 imagery on shortwave. So regardless, all of us within that 5 to 10 minutes of each other. But Mindy has made landfall. That is from our Cyclone analyst team. They went 5 minutes after the NHC did.
All right, so that is now Force 13 and the National Hurricane Center both in agreement that Tropical Storm Mindy has officially made landfall in Florida. Continuing our journey around the tropics here, as we're just about out of time. Yeah, you have 96W here, obviously going to be heavily influenced by Chanthu there, so I'm not expecting 96W to really get too terribly organized right now. Clearly, it is a mess in all of this convection with Chanthu off to its west. That's really going to inhibit any kind of development that we could see out of 96W right now. And then getting over into the Eastern Pacific, we'll actually use the GO 16 here to kind of zoom in on cover these last 3 storms. And in the center of your screen, you have Olaf, and I'm not going to make any frozen jokes, even though I've seen some of the chat saying Olaf needs warm hugs. I'm not going to make any jokes on that because Olaf does have that potential to become a hurricane threat for the Cabo San Lucas area of Mexico, as it does venture close to this peninsula in the next 2 to 3 days. So Olaf might like warm hugs, but he's threatening Cabo San Lucas with hurricane conditions, so no warm hugs. And there's your Olaf joke, so you can put that in the blooper reel. And moving over to...
Thanks for that, Tim.
And moving off into the Atlantic, there on the left, you can see what is now left of Mindy, as it has made landfall as of about 10 minutes ago, 45 miles an hour, 1,004 millibars was what the NHC ran with. Force 13 analysis, right around the same thing, maybe a couple minutes difference there on the timing, but all agencies are in agreement between our analysis and the NHC that Mindy has made landfall there just near around Apalachicola. You can really see just how disorganized Mindy is. Its influence going all the way up into the Carolinas. That's probably where we were seeing some of the rain at earlier today at this studio, and you can see some more convection blowing up right over the east coast of Florida. That's right around the Orlando, Daytona Beach area.
Yep.
That is also in association with Mindy, so some heavy rain and thunderstorms being felt in that area. And then getting over into the central Atlantic, that is Larry there as a category 2, still meandering out in the central Atlantic. Not really going to be a fish storm, since it could bring tropical storm force conditions to Bermuda.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about Newfoundland. Yeah, tropical storm for Bermuda, hurricane conditions for the for Newfoundland. Sorry for cutting you off.
Yeah.
I thought you were going straight for Newfoundland, but then I forgot. Wait, Bermuda's under a tropical storm warning.
Yeah, gotta go the chronology there. Bermuda, then Newfoundland. But yeah, that is what we have going on. And yes, we do have another area of interest. We'll actually take a look at it over on the Mateo satellite here. Right now, it is still over Central Africa. It is going to be this wave here in the center of the screen. It is forecast to get off into the extreme eastern part of the Atlantic by the Cabo Verde, Cape Verde Islands here in the next 2 to 3 days. National Hurricane Center does have it at 0 and 40 for the next 2 and 5 days of formation. So that is what we do have going on across the tropics. Any final thoughts from our team?
Stay safe.
Well, stay safe for everyone within these areas, but always listen to Pag-asa's tropical cyclone bulletins for your area's respective warnings. For the people who are already within the cone of uncertainty, you have time to evacuate. Do it now and immediately. For the people who are over here in Central Luzon and Metro Manila, you could also try to prepare it just in case the system decides to make that northeastern very late. It's only just a matter of time until it's expected northwestern, but just in case it doesn't make that northwestern, you should still prepare for the system, even though it's expected to make that northwestern in a short while. For Conson, it is currently, thankfully, leaving the Philippines and about to leave the Philippine area of responsibility within the next 48 hours. There's still some signal warnings in effect, but there's not gonna be any main issue from the storm anymore. It's only for Vietnam or Hainan, perhaps. But other than that, I have nothing to say.
Sorry about that. I had someone come in my room, but so yeah, it's just if you're in the path of Larry or Chanthu, take it seriously. Larry's CDPS stage 4, and Chanthu's a stage 6. That's life-threatening situation. That's where the tag begins with life-threatening situation. Conson is going to be going towards Vietnam and the Hainan Peninsula. It's been moving more and more southward, so no longer a forecasted Hainan Peninsula landfall. In about a day or two, we'll have a CDPS rating on that. At this point, it's looking like it's probably going to be like it was in... although I need to take a look at the rain. Oh no, the H-Wolf is saying a lot of rain, though, for both Chanthu and Conson. So that actually what might bump it up, the CDPS up. projection for now is we're going to see probably about a high 3 to low 4 for Conson for Vietnam when that does come out. The CDPS rating for it comes out in a day or so. But Mindy has made landfall. That CDPS was a stage 1. Olaf is currently stage 2 on the CDPS. Larry, as I said, is a 4. And Chanthu is at stage 6. We'll definitely be keeping an eye on it, on all these storms, and we're going to have a lot of landfall coverage over the next couple of days when it comes to these storms with Larry and Chanthu and Conson. Olaf's not expected to make landfall, but it's supposed to come close to Cabo San Lucas, where they could get hurricane force conditions. Hurricane watch is in effect there. And then we'll keep an eye on the area of interests around the world. There's that area of interest in the Atlantic. That's 040 from the NHC. We had it at 020 earlier, but we may have upgraded that now. East Pac is 020 and the Bay of Bengal 020. 96W is 010. And then obviously just reviewing what we had at Force 13, 0C fixes. Larry at 95 knots, so that's 110, 966. Mindy in agreement with the NHC with our landfall, so I'm going to use that at 40 knots, 1004. Olaf is 40 knots, 1002. Chanthu we have at 140 knot, 921. And Conson we have 50 knots, 993. Also at 96W, which I said percentage-wise is 010. That's currently 20 knots at 1009 pressure. So that is what we have. But Christian did do the tropical weather bulletin. So that is up. You guys can go watch that. I believe when Tim cuts us off here in a minute, probably the automated stream will come back, or Nathan will put that up in the morning when they prepare the live coverage for tomorrow morning. But that's pretty much it. So Tim, I'll send it back to you to wrap us up.
All right. Well, this is after our second loop of the outro. We'll go one more loop, just kind of recap everything right quick. As we do have a lot going on. We have Conson, Chanthu, 96W in the West Pac. We have Olaf in the Eastern Pacific, and Larry and Mindy in the Atlantic, along with a potential area of interest get ready to come off the coast of Africa here in the next 2 to 3 days. Again, as always, thank you for my team, which was Kristen, Jonesy, and Zenitsu this evening. This has been Force 13 Live. As the tropics are reminding us that the peak of the season has come upon us. National Hurricane Center Climatology does have the Northern Atlantic hurricane season at September 10th, and it's living up to the hype. We have 2 storms in the Atlantic, 3 in the Western Pacific, and Olaf in the Eastern Pacific. So definitely keep an eye on our social media outlets, Twitter, Facebook, for all of our updates. And as it's been mentioned, Tropical Weather Bulletin is now live for your viewing pleasure, done by Christian. So you will want to check that out for most of the information that we probably already covered. But you do have the On This Day feature, and I'm pretty sure it's a very interesting one. I think Christian did Ginger, I believe. I'm not sure of which year. So that will be your history lesson on the tropics for today. And as always, you can join the conversation on our Discord at discord.gg/Force13, where you can keep an eye on the tropics with our team, whether it be Northern Atlantic, East Pacific, West Pacific, or the Southern Hemisphere season, which is set to kick off here in the next 2 to 3 months. So plenty of discussion across all of our platforms for everything tropics. This has been Force 13 Live. My name has been Timothy Ringo. It's been an honor to serve you guys this evening, and hopefully the information we have given you will keep you safe through these storms. You guys have a great night and stay safe.